Hello everyone, this is Randy here. Thank you for joining me for another video. Today, the title of this video is Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Now, this is a particular stanza from Alexander Pope's poem. I don't remember the name of the poem, but it's a particular stanza from, or particular line rather, from that poem, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. And made famous by the Jim Carrey movie of the same name. And I think more recently there was a musical artist, perhaps Ariana Grande or someone. I may be misquoting the musical artist who, again, has recapitulated repeated this particular line. So it's a great line, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. For me, it means having mental clarity or having a space in one's mind that is free from intrusion. And I will explain what I mean by that. Having a mental space that is you'll get what I'm saying later on in this video, but having a mental space that is natural, free from intrusion and free from direct intrusion, because what I'm about to explain doesn't actually exist yet. So bear with me as I explore this topic with you. So our thoughts and our mind currently exist within a space that is to a large extent natural, in the sense that there is no direct advertising or direct propaganda going into our thoughts, invasive thoughts, right? Obviously, you see advertising on the streets, through your computer, through your smartphone, and you obviously are receiving propaganda from different sources on a day-to-day basis, right? So from visual sources, from audio sources, from sensory sources, you are being attacked on a day-to-day basis by advertising, by propaganda, by people trying to persuade you of one thing or another, by people trying to socially engineer you, by people trying to educate you. But it doesn't go directly into your mind. That's not yet possible. You can be brainwashed, you can be educated, you can be re-educated, forced through education, to go through education camps. You can receive all types of very blatant advertising. Yet all of this has to come from the external world. That will change in the future when we enter into a state of reality called quaternary reality. And for those of you who may not be familiar with some of the terms I'm using, I have a series of videos on the different layers of reality. The fourth layer, which is the theoretical layer that currently does not exist, is called quaternary reality. This is a layer where we are all linked by way of the mind using technological interface. There is some level of singularity and collective consciousness. All of our minds are linked through essentially a linking of data, a linking of neurons, and a linking of thought. So we are able to communicate through telepathy at this quaternary layer. Obviously, this doesn't currently exist, but it will exist soon. If you think of some of the inventions some of the inventions being worked on right now by Elon Musk and some of the innovators in the world, Neuralink and related technology, where thought and technology and thought and machines are being linked. It doesn't take a very large stretch of the imagination to then link humans to other humans, in the same way that the internet, which is a product of tertiary reality, or really the internet created the tertiary reality layer. It doesn't take a large stretch of the imagination for there to be linking between humans and artificial intelligence thereafter, right? Once there is enough interface and connectivity between our brain and technology and machines, then we will start to link each other, right? There will be connectivity between individuals. and artificial intelligence at that point. So that's sort of the theoretical future. Again, I have a number of videos about this quaternary reality layer. But today I want to talk about this sort of sacred time and space that we are in right now, where we still have an unblemished, spotless mind, if you will. The mind is, the space of the mind currently is unblemished, unintruded by I think all of the consequences and implications and the terrors of quaternary reality that will eventually result in things like direct advertising into your mind, direct propaganda that will come with communication, and once we're plugged into quaternary reality, you'll understand eventually. Like it's hard to describe something that doesn't exist, but I'll try to describe this by way of analogy, and why this period is so precious and so sacred. And we may not realize it. We may not realize how sacred and how precious this period of time is for us as humans before we lose the spotless mind forever. Okay, so let's go back in time. So I'm going to use a couple of analogies tracing the history of humanity and tracing the history of technology, and explain to you what I mean by sort of the spotless mind, and why certain spotless, unblemished natural things or environments or spaces begin to erode. Let's start first with a really obvious example, which is the Industrial Revolution. So prior to the Industrial Revolution, there was large stretches of natural land, right? There was large stretches of wilderness. Certainly there were cities and people lived in urban areas, but for the most part, most of the world was wild. It wasn't filled with cities and urbanized areas and machines and chimney stacks. There's a great documentary by David Attenborough who talks about how we are losing the wild, right? When David Attenborough, who's a famous British, naturalist and commentator with a very beautiful, plumey voice, when he was discovering the world in the 60s and doing these BBC documentaries, about 2/3 of the world, or maybe 50% of the world at the time, somewhere between 2/3 or 50% was wild, right? Was still not untouched, but still was forests and jungles and unintruded by human industrial activity and human settlements. And now in 2024, or when he made the documentary, which was maybe 2022, he states that 1/3 of the world is wild, right? So we've lost a significant, or only 1/3 of the world is wild. We've lost a significant amount of animal habitat, of nature, completely destroyed by farming, by industrial works, human settlements. But if we go even further back to the point of the Industrial Revolution, suppose we go back to the mid-1700s, right? The world would have looked very different. This world around us, take a look at this world. This is the world around us. You see these human settlements, these houses. This is just a tennis court, right? This is all human settlements, right? Concrete, trees organized in a very meticulous way, planted here by humans. Right, this is the world we live in, and this stretches on for miles. I could walk for hours, if not days, and I would be on the road, and there will be human settlements, and I would be in this world where there is little encounter with unblemished nature. Right, everything that looks like nature is not nature. This is not nature. This is a schoolyard. Right, this is the back of a schoolyard that was put here. Built here, established here by humans. This is not the wild. This is far from the wild. This is man-made civilization. But at a certain point, there was actually more nature. And in the 1750s and in the 1700s and 1800s, there was actually a movement called the pastoral movement by certain people in England and other places that experienced the Industrial Revolution first, and they longed for a return to nature, because the Industrial Revolution had a huge, profound impact, right? With trains and with chimneys and factories and changing entire landscapes and polluting entire landscapes with man-made things, and it must have been certainly a profound thing to behold for people living during that period of time, for people who were growing up with living a very pastoral life with few urban centers, and then ending their life perhaps seeing this great transformation of technology and of industry. It must have been profound and unsettling for a lot of people. So unblemished nature and the unblemished wild began to erode. And so that was, I think, one of the first big erosions of wilderness. And before, there was a space, there was an unblemished space, a spotless space, if you will, for nature to exist. And that space was eroded by human activity. And then we moved on, right? Then suppose we look at the start of the 20th century, right? The type of the cities we were living in and the types of communication we were receiving. I'm focusing then say on advertising, for just the type of advertising we were getting at the beginning of the 20th century. What was certainly less intrusive, right? So our civic space, our urban space was, yes, we didn't have the wilderness anymore, but it was still somewhat unblemished from this type of intrusion, from the intrusion of messages, perhaps unwanted messages, right? Advertising at the time was posters at most, verbal advertising from other human beings. With the advent of radio, then obviously it had radio advertising and then TV advertising, but it still wasn't that intrusive. You could go about your day in the 1920s or 1910s, and most of the advertising, I would assume, I didn't live through that period of time, as you can obviously imagine, but most of the advertising would have been paper advertising, right? Pamphlets, maybe radio, posters. So if you wanted to avoid it, it wasn't so intrusive, right? So as we advanced in technology, there was now more ways that advertising was displayed to us, right? As we advanced over 100 years since the 1920s, now we have big, LED screens. We have direct advertising through email, through the internet, and this sort of space. And the only way I can describe it is this space, free from intrusion of advertising. It began to erode. Right now we receive all this junk email. We receive all of this junk communication directly to our inbox. We are bombarded by advertising on a day-to-day basis on our smartphones. So the moment you log into any social media platform, the majority of what you see is now advertising. Right? When I first used Facebook 20 years ago, it was just a way for you to find extended family and maybe your friends, right? You can write on people's walls and send direct messages, but there was not advertising. There was not these, the way that Facebook, the platform, the way that it was presented was different. It wasn't, status updates and streams of other people's activities. It was just, it looked more like a very basic web platform. Right, Web 1.0, if you will, where you could just send messages to people and connect with other people and find them. So it was like a large telephone book. But now it's much more than that. It's an advertising. It's just an advertising platform, really, with being a social network in the background. And now that Zuckerberg wants to move it to the metaverse, eventually we're going to have all of this verse stuff as an overlay on top of your Facebook account, which will inevitably happen very soon, right? Inevitably, you're going to enter into the beginnings of quaternary reality, and Facebook and Instagram are going to be some of the forerunners of that. as we slowly enter into quaternary reality, as we are now connected with people through this virtual reality at a much more intimate level. It's maybe intimate's not the right word, but you know what I'm saying. There's going to be a lot of that happening, starting with social media platforms. They're going to really be in a way an unwanted game changer, because it's a technology that's being forced upon us rather than something that we're choosing. If it were up to me, we would go backwards in technology to a large extent. The technological advances are really being shoved down our throats right now. But going back to this idea of sort of at least an unblemished city, the city as a space was mostly unblemished from intrusion and from advertising. But now these spaces are not, right? Because there's now advertising everywhere. Every street corner is advertising on our smartphones, through our devices. There's direct advertising, and now catered advertising, and that's the scary part. Advertising that is now catered to your interests based on your search history, based on your preferences, based on what you say, because your phone, to a large extent, is listening to you. So based on what you say, based on what you search, based on your preferences, there's now catered advertising to you. Right now, that's still at the realm of a physical device. That's still, there is a physical separation between the advertising and between your mind. But once we get into quaternary reality, once we get into the world where there is linking between the minds, through telepathy, singularity, and through these technological advances, the catered advertising will now invade the spotless mind. Right now, you have this rare period of time, and enjoy it while it lasts, because it's not going to last forever. You have this rare period of time where the mind is pure, where you can meditate, be free from direct intrusion into your mind. Right? You can close your eyes and shut out the world right now. You have the ability to do that. In the future, you may not have the ability to do that. The moment you open your mind, you will receive a notification, or the analogous version of a notification, or some advertising. Right? It will go directly to your mind as a thought, or as an intrusive thought, as an image, as a sound, into your head, once you are plugged into quaternary reality. That is the future we are advancing towards. Assuming that capitalism stays as capitalism and we don't replace it with something else, then we have this very frightening future where this space that was once sacred, in the same way that, I use the analogy of the Industrial Revolution, where in the past where nature was sort of sacred and unblemished, that space was taken over. Then physical reality was taken over by advertising, and now mental reality, this space in your head, will be taken over by advertising. And what are some of the implications? Well, again, people are going to try to make money off of you, right? There's going to be people who are going to send you direct messages with the hopes that you will buy something, right? And the purchasing of things in a quaternary reality will probably be very simple. You don't have to click on anything. You just have to think about it, right? In the quaternary interface, you're communicating through some level of telepathy and some level of direct mind over matter. So the advertising will go to your mind, and if you're persuaded, then you will buy, or you will act in a certain way, or vote in a certain way, based on this propaganda, this message, this advertising that will go directly into your head. Could we block it in the same way that we have spam filters, firewalls? I'm sure you can probably download something that is a shield against intrusive mind advertising. I'm sure, but think about it. You have to then add a layer of technology to prevent things from happening to you. that normally in this current state would not have happened to you to begin with, right? The technology advances to the point where you need a spam filter. It's the same thing with like an antivirus, right? Or a spam filter on your computer. We didn't have the need for this before. We invented the internet, we invented email, we invented all of this tech, and then we started getting spam email, we started getting viruses and malware and Nigerian princes saying that you're going to get $1 million if you send over your credit card. So we got all of this. So then we had to invent firewalls and spam filters and malware detectors and antivirus programs, right, in response to the use of this technology. And then that means you have to be even more careful and have different levels of technology stopping other technology, right? And the arms race continues. So in the mind, there will be an arms race. I'm sure that there will be direct advertising catered to you, right? Now, not just catered to what you're saying, not just catered to your preferences, catered to your thoughts. Let me repeat that. Catered to your thoughts. Your thoughts will be recorded. Once you're in quaternary reality, your thoughts will be monitored and will be recorded as long as you're plugged into quaternary reality. It's the same way that once you're plugged onto the internet, despite deleting your cookies, your search history is available to the search engines and the different platforms, different websites who will scrape your search history and your internet behavior and sell it to advertisers. That's happening right now. So your thoughts, what you think, how you think, what you're thinking about will be scraped, and that will be sold. That will be sold to advertising, and on a much scarier level, right? We're talking about 1984 here, George Orwell. It could be submitted to government, or state actors, or regulators, right? So criminal thoughts, for example, if you have too many criminal thoughts, maybe there's a little bit of an alert. In Canada, for example, we have this thing called FinTrack, which monitors large cash transactions, right, in your bank accounts. And then if you trigger FinTrack, the RCMP or different regulators will get some notification that, hey, this person may be engaged in terrorist financing, right? And you may not even be aware of this. It's happening in the background. The infrastructure of banking and of regulation allows the monitoring of your financial transactions or certain types of financial transactions. So think of your thoughts, right? Think of if you have too many murderous thoughts or intrusive. Well, intrusive is being used in a different context here, but traditionally, if from a psychotherapy perspective, intrusive thoughts about murder, about harm, about these types of things. Could there be some type of direct intervention into your mind, or some agency is called? This is not too far-fetched. I was just for fun typing in something on ChatGPT, or I think it was ChatGPT, about a scene, or maybe in a search engine, a scene where Florence Pugh, who is an actress, she says, oh, this is a fun way to die, or something like that in one of the Black Widow movies. I think it's a quote where she says, oh, this is a cool way to die, or something like that. I was typing that in, and you know what I got? The first thing that I got was a suicide hotline. A suicide hotline showed up on my phone. This would have never happened 5 years ago. Right? You could have just searched the internet for whatever you wanted to search. There wouldn't be some intrusive, and I understand the intention behind it, but there wouldn't be some intrusive pop-up that would say, oh, by the way, you're searching for a movie quote. Maybe you're thinking about suicide. You should click here. Again, I understand the good intent behind this, but that's really intrusive, right? In the future, as you're thinking things, like if you have a suicidal thought, do you necessarily want the government now then to give you some advertising for a suicide hotline just because you had a thought? Do you just because you're lonely and you want to date, the future versions of Bumble and Tinder will go into your mind and say you should download these apps into your mind and meet other people telepathically. Here are singles in your area. Right, so every thought then is accompanied by a product, by some kind of state intervention, by something. Right, you can't have a pure thought. The spotless mind is intruded, and that's what I mean. So I hope I made myself clear. That's what I mean by the spotless mind. Right now, that's not possible. Right now, you can have a pure space of thought, unintruded, where you have the space. This is yours, right? This is your space. This is your personal space right now. But in the future, it will no longer be your personal space. And people born in the future who are plugged into quaternary reality will naturally no longer see this purely as their space. In the same way that individuals who are growing up in the age of smartphones and tablets don't imagine and can't imagine a world where these pieces of technology do not exist. It just becomes impossible for them to imagine such a world. In the same way that it's very difficult for me to imagine a world where I have to fetch water and ride on a horse, right? It's just almost impossible for me to imagine that type of world because you didn't grow up into it. So the implications are profound, where thoughts could be monitored, and then there will be particular algorithms that will respond to the types of thoughts that you have, and there will be certainly an arms race between receiving these messages and trying to block them out. And in the same way that spam filters and antivirus, that costs money, perhaps in the future those who can't afford it will get more advertising. You're already seeing a stratification of based on income level, where if you have certain pieces of technology available and you're willing to pay for YouTube Premium, for example, you don't get advertised to, but then you're going to have to pay a certain amount of money per month. And if you're unable to pay for YouTube Premium, you get advertising. Or Spotify, or these subscription services, software as a service. It's such a BS concept. Back in the day, we would just get a CD-ROM, right? When I was growing up in the 90s, you get a CD-ROM, you would just keep the software. But now everything's a subscription service. Like, this was never meant to be a subscription service. It's just a way to cheat you of more money. But that's what the tech companies have done. They've turned everything into a subscription. So your mind will be a subscription, right? You're going to have to subscribe to things, to services in your mind, blocking out other intrusive thoughts that are going to be generated by companies and governments to try to persuade you or attack you or encourage you to buy things. So going back with this YouTube Premium idea, people who can afford to buy these types of mental clarity software in their mind, then they may not get as many intrusive thoughts. But if you're unable to afford it, if you're living in poverty, or if you're you may just get more advertising, and then but this is directly into your mind, so you become a victim of the system, right? You are then unable to think freely because every day, every minute, you're being attacked by a constant barrage of intrusive thoughts, trying to persuade you to do something or to act a certain way. Imagine an election battle going on in your head. Suppose you have two different parties who are, generating attack ads. Imagine the toxicity. Already the political system is polarized, but imagine an election battle going on in your head through telepathy. And the intensity and the vitriol of such a battle of attack ads, right? Hate this person, well, no, hate this other person. And this is just direct advertising in your head, right? These thoughts are going to go directly into your head, and you're going to have this argument between different people happening in your head, trying to convince you to vote in a certain way, right? And that's assuming we would have a democracy. If it's a dictatorship and this type of technology exists, what's going to happen. It's just complete mind control, right? The government will just control what you can think, monitor what you can think. It's going to be 1984, all right? So you may not have even a choice of being plugged into quaternary reality. In a democratic society, you may have a choice. You can unplug yourself from quaternary reality in the same way that you can unplug yourself from tertiary reality, in that you can shut off the internet, turn off your Wi-Fi, and not be online. But maybe in some societies in the future, some dictatorships or totalitarian societies, you will be forced to be plugged in, right? You could be arrested for not being plugged in, right? You will be monitored. in this sort of dark dystopian future, you have no choice but to be monitored. Your thoughts are monitored, and thoughts and the wishes and prayers and the directive of the totalitarian state will then be directly transmitted to you. So that's total control over the population in a state where quaternary reality yields these types of results. So that's a very scary implication, right? Elon Musk, who he's very controversial. I have a love-hate relationship with him. He's thinking he's trying to, I don't know, link people through Neuralink to, I don't know what he's trying to do with it. Make money, maybe. He's thinking he's advancing humanity, but once this technology gets into the wrong hands, and you have neural connectivity between different people, but then you're connected to the state, that's game over, right? That's a totalitarian state that has an iron fist over your thoughts, how you think, what you think, controlling how you think. That is total dominant control over a population. And that's the totalitarian nightmare. The democratic version is you get lots of people trying to compete in your head for votes, and you got lots of advertisers trying to compete for your attention so you can buy things, which is still terrible, but it's mildly better than the totalitarian version. There is no future where I can see this as entirely positive, where we're linking everyone's mind through quaternary reality. But that is what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to create a world of singularity, telepathy, of collective consciousness. But it's going to be quite scary. Plus, a lot of the communication in that future will be done through AI agents. So you're not going to be communicating with a lot of other human beings. You're going to be communicating with artificial intelligence, who are artificially intelligent agents who will be communicating with you. So think of ChatGPT, but at a much advanced level. Mentally communicating with you in some way, and it may, in the future, that future version will have its own agenda, and there will be perhaps hundreds, if not thousands, of these independent AI agents. We're already seeing the development of AI agents in the crypto world, with certain agents associated with different cryptocurrencies and with their own Twitter accounts and X accounts and social media accounts, communicating directly with human beings. And speaking as if they're completely autonomous. So we're seeing this development. There's a really interesting development called AI agents. I encourage you to research this topic. I don't have all the time to talk about AI agents today, but it's a new and fascinating development in the world of AI, and there's an intersection with cryptocurrency as well. So really, really fascinating developments in sort of mid-late 2024. The world is going through monumental change. Right, starting with the pandemic in 2020, the decade of the 2020s is a defining decade. This is going to, when historians look back at this decade, it's going to be a defining decade. There's going to be so many big changes that happened or that started in this decade. There's geopolitical realignment in the world. We're going back to certain Cold War tendencies. Obviously, we had the pandemic. We have the birth of what could be called the start of the AI revolution. And obviously, global warming and climate change and everything else is going to really fuck us up in a big way. Right, the monsoons, the storms, the hurricanes. The world is going to go through some really interesting stuff. But on top of that, your mind will be invaded by advertising. Imagine that. So, what can I say? 2019 was probably the last innocent year we had as humanity. Then the pandemic happened and everything went to shit. Imagine yourself in 2019. Imagine the lack of travel restrictions. Imagine that you could still meet without regulations, without lockdown. You could still meet your friends. You could still travel. You weren't forced to be vaccinated. 2019, if you lived in 2019, you would never have imagined what would have happened a year later, right? You would never have imagined. I mean, maybe there's one or two people on the planet who could have imagined that future, but the majority of us could never have imagined that future. And we were taking it for granted. We were taking travel for granted. We were taking meeting with friends for granted. We were taking a lot of this for granted. So I'm telling you right now, don't take it for granted. Your mind is the next green space, if you will. During the Industrial Revolution, industrialists went to fields and forests, and they cleared it. They cleared the fields, the forests, the nature. It was seen as a resource for them. They cleared it. They took the lumber. They harvested the resources. And our modern world is built upon that exploitation of nature. That was the green space at the time, literally green space. It was nature that we exploited, and now we've built a world based on that exploitation. But the new green space is your mind, right? As we develop into the late stages of tertiary reality and into quaternary reality, the new spaces to be conquered by those who wish to conquer is actually your mind. And as we move into a wholesome, not wholesome, but a comprehensive attention economy, this is what the future looks like. Your mind is sacred. So I encourage you, I implore you to enjoy these last few years. And maybe it's a decade, maybe it's 2 decades, maybe it's 3 decades, but these are from a big timeline perspective, these are the last few years of the spotless mind. Please enjoy. Please enjoy the space that you have in your mind, the mental clarity, the ability to have thoughts without intrusion, because that will come to an end sooner than you think. Please enjoy your mind. Please enjoy everything that your mind has to offer, because it's a sacred space, and it will be gone soon. So enjoy the sacred space, cherish it, be grateful for it, and love your mind, because your mind is your most precious resource. Okay, that's it for today. This is Randy I signing off. I hope you enjoyed this video. Doom and gloom for everyone, right? Hope to see you in the next video, and I hope you're having an amazing day. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.